The sound of skin meeting skin echoed across the Romano estate garden at exactly 3:02 p.m., and Dante Romano watched the only woman he'd ever loved press a hand to her burning cheek while his bride, his brand-new wife, stood there smiling like she'd just won something. In 18 minutes, Victoria Ashford would learn that the black woman she'd just humiliated in front of 200 guests owned the very ground she was standing on. In 18 minutes, Victoria's entire family would be on their knees. But right now, in this moment, all Dante could see was the single tear sliding down Naomi's face before she turned and walked away from him forever. If you've ever watched someone destroy the one thing they should have protected, if you've ever seen karma arrive exactly on time, then you need to stay with me through this story. Because what you're about to witness isn't just revenge. It's the moment a woman who spent 8 years loving a man in silence finally shows him exactly what he lost. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to break your heart before it puts it back together. Nobody knew that Naomi Jenkins and Dante Romano had history. Nobody knew that 8 years ago, before the family business, before the reputation, before everything, they'd met at a coffee shop near Northwestern University where Dante was finishing his MBA and Naomi was starting her PhD in organizational psychology. Nobody knew that for 6 months, they'd fallen in love in secret, stolen moments between his family obligations and her research. Late-night phone calls that stretched until sunrise. Weekend drives along Lake Michigan where they'd park and talk for hours, her head on his shoulder, his fingers threading through her hair, the way he'd kiss her forehead and whisper, "You're the only real thing in my life, Naomi. Everything else is just performance." And nobody knew that Dante's father had found out and given his son an ultimatum delivered in his study over expensive scotch and expensive threats. "You will not disgrace this family by marrying that girl. I don't care what you feel. You will end this or I will destroy her family's business, her mother's career, everything she has. And then I will cut you off without a cent choose." Dante had been 26 years old, terrified of his father, and convinced he had no choice. So one October night, he'd met Naomi at their coffee shop and said the words that would haunt him for 8 years. "I'm sorry. My father won't allow it. I can't lose everything for..." He'd stopped himself, but the damage was done. "For me," Naomi had finished quietly, her voice steady even as her hands shook around her coffee cup. "You can't lose everything for me." She'd stood up, grabbed her coat, and walked out of that coffee shop with her dignity intact and her heart shattered into pieces so small she'd spent months finding them all. And then she'd made a decision that would change everything. She'd join the Romano household staff under her mother's maiden name, Jenkins, and she'd work her way up until she was invaluable, until they needed her, until Dante had to see her every single day and remember what he'd thrown away. For 8 years, she'd been professional, distant, perfect. She'd climbed from assistant coordinator to head of household operations, managing 17 staff members and a $50 million estate. She'd earned Catherine Romano's trust and respect. She'd made herself indispensable. For 8 years, Dante had watched her move through his family's home like a ghost of his greatest mistake, and he'd said nothing, done nothing, just carried his guilt like a stone in his chest and pretended he didn't still love her. And for 8 years, neither of them had spoken about that coffee shop, about those 6 months, about the future they'd almost had, about the way her name still caught in his throat sometimes when he had to speak to her about household matters. Until today, until Victoria Ashford decided that Naomi needed to be reminded of her place. Naomi had been awake since 3 a.m., coordinating the wedding that was killing her slowly from the inside out. Every white rose she'd arranged felt like it had thorns that went straight into her chest. Every detail she'd perfected was for another woman wearing the ring that should have been hers. Every time she passed Dante in the hallway that morning and had to maintain her professional mask while her heart screamed, she felt the weight of 8 years of silence pressing down until she could barely breathe. But she was a professional. She'd survived 8 years of this. She could handle one more day. What she couldn't handle was Victoria's cruelty. It started the moment Victoria walked into the preparation room at 10 a.m., surrounded by her bridesmaids like a queen with her court. Victoria's eyes had found Naomi immediately, and something dark had flickered across her face. She knew. Somehow she knew. Not the details, not the history, but Victoria had sensed something between Dante and his house manager. Some current that ran beneath the surface of their carefully professional interactions. And even though she couldn't name it, couldn't prove it, she was threatened by it. "The champagne is warm," Victoria announced, not even looking directly at Naomi. "Fix it." Naomi checked the bottles. They were precisely 42 degrees, exactly as specified. "Ms. Ashford, these are at the optimal temperature for—" "Did I ask for a lecture?" Victoria's voice could have cut glass. "I said they're warm. Replace them now. Or are you too incompetent to follow simple instructions?" One of the bridesmaids giggled. Naomi swallowed the humiliation and replaced the champagne without another word. 30 minutes later, Victoria complained that the flowers were too fragrant and demanded Naomi personally remove half of them from the room. When Naomi returned with her arms full of expensive peonies, Victoria was waiting with a glass of champagne in her hand and something cruel in her eyes. "Careful," Victoria said, stepping directly into Naomi's path. "You wouldn't want to drop those." She bumped into Naomi's arm. The flowers scattered across the floor. Champagne splashed onto Naomi's uniform. "Oh my God, you're so clumsy," Victoria said loudly, making sure her bridesmaids could hear. "Maybe this job is too much for you. Maybe you should go back to whatever it is people like you do when you're not serving people like me. People like you." The words hung in the air with all their ugly implications. Naomi bent down and began gathering the flowers, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the stems. She felt Victoria's eyes on her, felt the satisfaction radiating from the bride like heat. At 11:30, Victoria cornered Naomi alone in the hallway outside the preparation room. She leaned in close, and Naomi could smell the champagne and cruelty on her breath. "I see the way you look at him," Victoria whispered. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? You're pathetic. A maid with a crush on her boss. It's embarrassing." Naomi's face remained neutral, but something inside her cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ms. Ashford." "Don't you?" Victoria's smile was poison. "It's MAFIA'S Romano now. And you'll remember that. You'll remember that he chose me. He's marrying me today. Whatever little fantasy you have in your head about him, it ends today. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing. And he knows it." In the hallway just around the corner, Dante stood frozen, listening to every venomous word. He'd come to check on the preparations and heard his bride tearing into Naomi with a viciousness that made him physically sick. He should have walked in. Should have stopped it. Should have told Victoria the truth right then. That Naomi wasn't some lovesick employee. That she was the woman he'd loved first and never stopped loving. That every day of the past 8 years had been an exercise in pretending his heart wasn't breaking. He didn't. He walked away instead, just like he'd walked away 8 years ago. And that cowardice would cost him everything. The ceremony began at 2 p.m. under a perfect blue sky. 200 guests. 12,000 white roses. A string quartet playing Vivaldi. Dante stood at the altar in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo and watched Victoria walk down the aisle, and all he could think about was Naomi. Where was she? Was she watching? Was this killing her the way it was killing him? He said his vows like a man in a dream, put the ring on Victoria's finger, kissed her when the officiant told him to, smiled for the cameras, and felt absolutely nothing except the growing certainty that he'd just made the worst mistake of his life. Naomi stood in the very back of the garden, partially hidden behind a marble pillar, and watched Dante promise forever to a woman who'd spent the morning humiliating her. She'd made it through the entire ceremony with her professional mask firmly in place, her hands clasped in front of her, her spine straight. She'd made it all the way until Dante kissed Victoria, and then something inside her just broke. At exactly 1 p.m., while the guests moved to the reception area and champagne flowed like water, Naomi slipped away, down the marble stairs, through the kitchen, into the wine cellar where the temperature was always cool and the thick stone walls meant no one could hear you. She made it 3 steps inside before the first sob tore out of her throat. Her knees hit the cold floor, her hands pressed against the ancient stone wall, and 8 years of grief came pouring out in gasping, choking sobs that shook her entire body. She thought she could handle this. She thought 8 years of practice had made her strong enough. She thought she could watch the man she loved marry someone else and survive it with her dignity intact. She was wrong. "I hate you," she whispered to the empty cellar, not even sure if she meant Dante or herself or the entire unfair universe. "I hate you. I hate you. I hate you." Her mascara ran down her face in black streams. Her carefully pinned hair came loose. Her whole body shook with the force of her crying. For exactly 7 minutes, Naomi Jenkins-Blackwell let herself completely fall apart. And then, at 1:07 p.m., she stood up, wiped her face with shaking hands, went to the small bathroom in the corner of the cellar and fixed her makeup, repinned her hair, straightened her uniform, looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "You can do this. Just a few more hours. Then you never have to see him again." She walked back upstairs with her spine straight and her head high, and no one would have ever known that she'd just broken into pieces in the wine cellar. Because that's what you do when the man you love marries someone else. You survive it, even when it feels impossible. The reception was in full swing by 2:30 p.m. Victoria held court at the head table, already on her 4th glass of champagne, her voice getting louder and sharper with each passing minute. She complained about the temperature, about the music, about the way the afternoon light was hitting her face, about everything and nothing, each complaint delivered with increasing malice, always directed at Naomi. Dante sat beside his new wife and drank steadily, trying to numb the feeling that he'd just signed away the rest of his life to the wrong person. At 2:58 p.m., one of the waiters, a young man who'd been hired specifically for the wedding, turned too quickly while carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres. His elbow bumped into Victoria as she stood to greet a guest. The tray tilted. A single canopy, barely the size of a quarter, landed on the train of her dress. A tiny spot of sauce, barely visible against the ivory silk. Victoria's scream could be heard across the entire garden. "My dress! My $15,000 dress!" Guests stopped mid-conversation. The string quartet faltered. Everyone turned to look. The young waiter went white with terror. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Romano. I didn't. Get away from me." Victoria shoved him so hard he stumbled backward. "You ruined my dress. You ruined my wedding." Naomi appeared within 30 seconds, professional as always, holding a clean napkin and a bottle of specialized stain remover she'd kept on standby for exactly this type of emergency. "Mrs. Romano, this can be fixed in seconds. If you'll just let me." "Don't touch me." Victoria whirled on her, and the look in her eyes was pure venom. "This is your fault. You hired him. You're in charge of the staff. You've been sabotaging me all day." The accusation was so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that Naomi actually paused. "Ma'am, I assure you, no one has been sabotaging." "Liar!" Victoria's voice climbed higher, edged with hysteria. "You've been undermining me since the moment I arrived. The champagne, the flowers, everything. You can't stand it, can you? You can't stand that I won, that he chose me." The garden went absolutely silent. Every guest, every staff member, every single person at that reception froze and stared. Dante's head snapped up from across the terrace, champagne glass halfway to his lips. No, she wouldn't." Catherine Romano started moving toward them, her face alarmed. "Victoria, that's quite enough. It's not enough." Victoria was spiraling now, her voice shrill and unhinged. "She's been looking at him all day, at my husband. She thinks she has some kind of claim on him. Well, she doesn't. She's nothing. Just the help." Naomi stood there, napkin still in her hand, and felt every eye in the garden on her. Felt the weight of 8 years of silence pressing down. Felt her carefully constructed professional armor starting to crack. "I assure you," she said quietly, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking, "I have no claim on anyone. I'm simply trying to do my job. Please, let me just clean the stain before it sets." She stepped forward with the napkin, reaching for Victoria's dress. And that's when it happened. Victoria's hand came up fast and hard, and the sound of the slap echoed across the garden like a gunshot. For 3 full seconds, the world stopped. Naomi stood there, one hand slowly rising to her burning cheek, her head turned to the side from the force of the blow. She felt the sting spreading across her face, felt the shocked silence of 200 people, felt something warm sliding down her cheek. A single tear she couldn't stop. Not a sob, not a scene. Just one tear that slipped out before she could control it, betraying the pain she'd been hiding for 8 years. And Dante Romano, watching from 15 feet away, felt his heart stop in his chest. He'd failed her 8 years ago when he'd chosen his family's approval over her love. He'd failed her this morning when he'd heard Victoria's cruelty and said nothing. And he was failing her right now by standing here in shock instead of... The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the marble terrace. Victoria. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. What the fuck did you just do? She was being insubordinate. Victoria's eyes were wild, desperate. She's been undermining me all day. She was trying to help you. Dante's voice rose, and everyone could hear the rage underneath it. She was trying to fix your dress, and you hit her? I'm your wife, Victoria shrieked. You're supposed to take my side. You're supposed to. Not when you're wrong. The words came out like an explosion. Not when you put your hands on someone. Jesus Christ, Victoria. What is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Victoria laughed, high and broken. What's wrong with me? I just married a man who's in love with the help, and you're asking what's wrong with me? The accusation hung in the air between them, and the silence that followed was deafening. Dante couldn't answer, couldn't deny it, because it was true, and everyone watching could see it written all over his face. Naomi wiped the tear from her cheek with a shaking hand, and when she spoke, her voice was so quiet that everyone had to strain to hear it. It's fine, Mrs. Romano. She looked at Catherine, not at Dante, never at Dante. I think it's time everyone knew the truth anyway. Excuse me. She turned and walked toward the mansion, spine straight, head high, and Dante started to follow her before Victoria grabbed his arm with both hands. Where do you think you're going? This is our wedding. You can't just... Dante looked down at her hands on his arm, and something in his expression made her let go immediately. Let go of me. Each word was ice. You just assaulted someone at our wedding, in front of 200 witnesses. Do you have any idea what you've done? In the crowd, whispers started like wildfire. The older guests, the ones who'd known the Romano family for decades, they'd always suspected something. They'd seen the way Dante's eyes followed his house manager when he thought no one was looking. The way Naomi was always professionally distant with him in a way that felt deliberate, protective. The way Catherine Romano spoke about Naomi with genuine affection and respect that went beyond employer-employee relationships. Did she really just? Oh my God. She has no idea who Naomi really is. This is going to be bad. Really, really bad. Marcus Blackwell is going to destroy them. Inside the mansion, Naomi climbed the stairs on shaking legs. Not to the staff quarters. To the private wing, to a suite that very few people knew existed. A suite that had been hers for 8 years. Ever since Catherine Romano had discovered who she really was and insisted she stop living in the staff housing. She locked the door behind her, leaned against it, and pulled out her phone with trembling hands. The phone rang twice before a deep, cultured voice answered. Naomi? Baby girl, what's wrong? Just hearing her uncle's voice made the tears come again. Uncle Marcus. Her voice cracked. She slapped me. Who slapped you? Marcus Blackwell's voice turned to steel instantly. Who put their hands on my niece? The bride. Victoria Ashford. She's... Naomi's breath hitched. Marcus, she knows. Somehow she knows about Dante and me, and she's been punishing me for it all day. And I tried to be professional, but she humiliated me in front of everyone, and then she... A sob cut off her words. Where are you right now? In my suite. At the Romano estate. It's Dante's wedding. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could be strong and professional and pretend it doesn't kill me every single day to see him. But I can't. Another sob. I can't do this anymore, Marcus. I just want to leave. I want to resign and never see this place again. No. Marcus's voice was firm. Absolutely not. You are not running from this. You are Naomi Jenkins-Blackwell. You are brilliant and powerful, and nobody puts their hands on you and walks away from it. Do you understand me? But I'm making some calls right now. And Naomi, that woman is going to learn that some people you slap don't just turn the other cheek. Some people own the very ground you're standing on. Outside in the garden, Dante's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and felt his blood run cold. Uncle Marcus. There was no warmth in Marcus Blackwell's voice. Put your mother on the phone, Dante. Right now. Dante handed the phone to Catherine with a shaking hand. She walked away from the crowd, and the 3-minute conversation that followed made her age 10 years. When she hung up, she stood there for a long moment, eyes closed, one hand pressed to her chest. Then she walked back to the reception with the expression of someone heading to an execution. She went straight to Victoria, who was still standing at the head table, surrounded by her bridesmaids who were all assuring her she'd done the right thing. Victoria. Catherine's voice cut through the chatter. We need to talk. Right now. Can't it wait? This is my wedding, and I'm not going to let some disrespectful employee ruin. Your wedding is over. Catherine's voice was flat. Come with me, now, and someone get the Ashford family on the phone. Tell them to get here immediately. What? Why would we? Because in approximately 10 minutes, their daughter's actions are going to cost them everything they own. The color drained from Victoria's face. And then, at exactly 3:19 p.m., the mansion's main doors opened, and Naomi Jenkins-Blackwell emerged. She wasn't wearing her staff uniform anymore. Navy blue Chanel suit that fit like it had been made specifically for her body, because it had been. Cartier pearls that cost more than Victoria's wedding dress. Hair swept up in an elegant chignon that showcased cheekbones that could have graced a magazine cover. Louboutin heels that made her already impressive height commanding. She looked like exactly what she was. Old money, real power, the kind of woman who could buy and sell everyone at this wedding twice over and not even notice the expense. The crowd parted as she descended the marble stairs. Victoria's face went from flushed to pale in an instant. Dante felt like someone had punched him in the chest. 8 years. She'd been here for 8 years, and he'd never asked why. Never questioned why a woman who moved like that, spoke like that, carried herself like that would take a position managing household staff. How had he been so blind? Catherine Romano stepped forward, and despite everything, there was a note of grim satisfaction in her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding today. Allow me to properly introduce Naomi Jenkins-Blackwell, niece of Marcus Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Holdings, which controls approximately 40% of Chicago's commercial real estate and sits on the board of 11 major corporations. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Naomi has been working in our household for 8 years, Catherine continued, her eyes sweeping across the shocked faces. Not because she needed employment, but because she was conducting research for her PhD in organizational psychology. She completed her dissertation last month, Power Dynamics in High Net Worth Household Management. It's already been published in 3 academic journals and is being considered for a book deal with Harvard University Press. More gasps. Someone's champagne flute hit the ground and shattered. Victoria looked like she was going to be sick. But more importantly, Catherine's voice hardened, and she looked directly at Victoria. The Blackwell Family Trust, of which Naomi is the sole trustee, holds the mortgages and deeds on 60% of Romano Holdings' commercial properties. Properties that, as of this moment, are no longer available for lease renewal. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble terrace. And then 3 black Mercedes pulled up the circular driveway, tires crunching on the gravel. Victoria's family had arrived. Richard Ashford emerged from the first car looking like he'd aged 20 years in the past 15 minutes. Patricia Ashford came from the second, her makeup already ruined from crying. Brandon Ashford, Victoria's older brother, climbed out of the third car with murder in his eyes. They looked terrified. Richard ran across the garden, his expensive suit rumpled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Victoria, what have you done?" "Daddy, I didn't know. How was I supposed to know she was?" "You put your hands on someone." Patricia's voice was shaking. "You struck someone at your own wedding. Do you understand what you've done to this family?" Brandon grabbed Victoria's arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. His voice was low and furious. "The Blackwell Trust holds the notes on Dad's company. All of them. Every single loan. We just got a call 15 minutes ago that they're being called in immediately. 30 days. Full payment. We don't have that kind of liquidity, Vic. We're ruined. Ruined." "But I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Brandon's voice rose. "You didn't know that you shouldn't put your hands on another human being? You didn't know that actions have consequences? What the hell is wrong with you?" Victoria's grandmother, Margaret Ashford, moved past them all with the slow dignity of her 83 years. She walked directly to Naomi, and the elderly woman's hands were trembling as she reached out. "Ms. Blackwell," her voice cracked, "please, I'm begging you. My granddaughter is cruel and foolish, but she's young. She didn't understand. She's 26 years old, Mrs. Ashford." Naomi's voice was soft but unyielding. "The same age I was when Dante Romano told me he loved me but couldn't be with me because I wasn't good enough for his family." The garden erupted in shocked whispers. Dante felt like the ground had opened up beneath his feet. "So I made myself good enough," Naomi continued, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "I worked in this house for 8 years. I earned their respect through competence and dedication. I proved my worth every single day. And today, your granddaughter slapped me and told me to know my place." Her gaze locked on Victoria. "So let me show you my place." She turned to Richard Ashford, and her voice carried across the silent garden. "Your company's loans are due in 30 days. Full payment. No extensions. No negotiations. No exceptions." "Please," Richard's voice broke. "Please, Ms. Blackwell, we can't. We don't have. You will lose everything. Your business, your homes, your country club memberships, your social standing. All of it. Because your daughter thought she could put her hands on someone she considered beneath her." "Naomi." Dante's voice cracked as he pushed through the crowd. "Please, this isn't you. You're not cruel. You don't punish innocent people for." "Innocent." Naomi turned to him, and the pain in her eyes made him physically step back. "Your wife humiliated me for hours today. She's been tormenting me because she sensed what you were too much of a coward to tell her. That you married her to please your family, but you never stopped loving me." The truth hung in the air between them like smoke. Victoria's voice was small suddenly, almost childlike. "Is that true? Did you love her?" Dante couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Dante." Victoria's voice rose. "Did you love her?" "Yes." The word came out like a confession. "Do you still?" The pause was too long. Far, far too long. Victoria's laugh was broken and bitter. "Oh my God. I'm ruined. My family's ruined. And it's all because I married a man who was in love with someone else the entire time." Patricia Ashford fell to her knees on the marble terrace, her expensive dress pooling around her, her hands clasped together. "Please, Ms. Blackwell. Please. We'll do anything. Victoria will apologize." "I don't want her apology." Naomi's voice was cold. "I want her to lose everything. The way she tried to make me feel like nothing." "Naomi." Catherine stepped forward carefully. "I understand you're hurt. You have every right to be. But is this really who you want to be? Is this the person your uncle raised you to become?" "Who I want to be?" Naomi's composure cracked for the first time. "I wanted to be the woman Dante Romano loved enough to fight for. I wanted to be good enough for his family without having to prove anything. I spent 8 years demonstrating my worth, my competence, my value, and it changed nothing. So yes, Mrs. Romano. Today, I want to be exactly this, the woman who shows people that cruelty has consequences." She turned to leave, and Dante caught her arm. "Naomi, wait, please." His voice broke on her name. "I was wrong. 8 years ago, I was wrong. I should have chosen you. I should have fought for you instead of... But you didn't. She pulled her arm free, and he felt the loss of her warmth like a physical wound. You chose comfort over courage. You chose your family's approval over my heart. And then you married a woman you don't love while I stood in the back of the garden and watched. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So don't ask me for mercy now, Dante. You used up all of yours 8 years ago. She walked toward the mansion, and Dante stood there watching her go, his hands still extended, his whole body shaking. Naomi, he called out, desperate. Naomi, please just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. She stopped at the base of the stairs and turned back, and for just a moment, just one heartbeat, Dante thought maybe she would listen. Maybe he could fix this. Maybe there was still a chance. You want 5 minutes? Naomi's voice was soft. I gave you 8 years, Dante. I worked in your home. I made myself invaluable to your family. I stayed close enough that if you'd ever found the courage, you could have reached out and chosen me. 8 years of 5-minute chances. And you never took a single one. I was scared. I was scared too. The words burst out of her. Do you think it wasn't terrifying for me? Do you think I wasn't scared every single day that you'd bring home a woman you'd actually fight for? That you'd fall in love with someone worthy of your precious family's approval? Tears streamed down her face now, and she didn't bother wiping them away. But I stayed. I stayed and hoped and waited like a fool. And then you brought home Victoria, and I realized you weren't going to choose me. You were going to choose comfort, safety, the path of least resistance. That's not. It is exactly that. She took a shaky breath. And the worst part? The absolute worst part is that I would have forgiven you. If you'd come to me a month ago, a week ago, even yesterday and said, I made a mistake. I love you, I want to try. I would have forgiven you everything. She laughed, broken and raw. How pathetic is that? Dante's face was wet with tears. He didn't remember starting to cry. Then forgive me now. Please, Naomi. I'll leave her. I'll get the marriage annulled. We can start over. No. The word was final. You don't get to use me as your escape hatch from a bad decision. You don't get to leave Victoria for me and then spend the rest of our lives wondering if you only chose me because your first choice didn't work out. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I deserve better than being someone's second choice. I deserve someone who chooses me first, who fights for me, who doesn't need to lose everything before he realizes what he had. She turned and climbed the stairs, and this time when Dante tried to follow, Catherine grabbed his arm. Let her go, Dante. I can't. I love her. I know you do. Everyone knows. His mother's voice was infinitely sad. But loving someone isn't enough if you're too afraid to choose them when it matters. You had 8 years of moments where you could have fought for her, and you chose your pride, your comfort, your father's approval instead. So what do I do now? Nothing. Catherine's voice was firm. You do nothing. You give her space. You give her time. And you accept that some consequences can't be undone. She looked at Victoria, who was sobbing in her mother's arms, while her family made desperate phone calls that would go nowhere. You made your choice. Now you live with it. The reception dissolved into chaos after that. Guests left in clusters, whispering and filming on their phones. The Ashford family huddled together, making call after call to banks, to lawyers, to anyone who might help them avoid the financial ruin that was coming. Victoria sat alone at the head table in her $15,000 dress, still in her veil, mascara running down her face. She wasn't crying about the money. She was crying because she just realized she'd married a man who would never love her, who had only married her because she was safe, acceptable, easy. She looked up and saw Dante standing 20 feet away, staring at the mansion where Naomi had disappeared. You're not even going to pretend, are you? Victoria's voice was hollow. You're not going to pretend you care that our marriage is over before it even started. Dante turned to look at her, and for the first time since he'd proposed, he was completely honest. No, I'm not going to pretend. Victoria laughed, broken and bitter. At least you're finally being truthful about something. She twisted the massive diamond ring off her finger and set it on the table between them. Keep it. Sell it. I don't care. I never want to see it again. Victoria, I'm a placeholder, aren't I? She looked at him with red, swollen eyes. I was always just the woman you married because you were too afraid to fight for the one you actually loved. Dante couldn't answer, couldn't deny it. I hope she breaks your heart, Victoria whispered. The way you broke mine, the way I broke hers. I hope you spend the rest of your life loving someone who won't take you back. She stood up, grabbed her train, and walked away to join her devastated family. Inside the mansion, Naomi stood at the window of her suite and watched the chaos unfold below. Her phone buzzed constantly, texts from Marcus asking if she was okay, messages from her academic advisor congratulating her on the publication, missed calls from friends who'd somehow already heard what happened, and one text from a number she'd deleted 8 years ago but still recognized. I'm sorry. For everything. For 8 years ago. For today. For not being brave enough when it mattered. You deserved so much better than me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know that losing you is the biggest regret of my life. Naomi stared at the message for a long time. Her finger hovered over the reply button. For just a moment, she imagined what would happen if she replied. If she told him to come upstairs. If she gave him one more chance to choose her. But then she thought about 8 years of silence. 8 years of watching him with other women. 8 years of making herself small and professional while her heart broke in secret. 8 years of hoping and waiting and being disappointed. And she thought about how he'd only found his courage now, when everything had fallen apart. When his marriage was ruined. When he had nothing left to lose. Not when it would have cost him something. Not when it would have taken bravery. Now, when it was convenient. She deleted the message. Then she scrolled through her photos to one she'd kept hidden in a locked folder for 8 years. A picture taken at that coffee shop near Northwestern. Her and Dante, young and happy and so naively in love. His arm around her shoulders. Her head against his chest. Both of them smiling like nothing could ever go wrong. She looked at that photo for a long time, memorizing every detail one final time. Then she deleted it too. Some apologies come too late. Some moments can't be recaptured. Some doors, once closed, can never be opened again. Naomi set her phone down, walked to her closet, and began packing. She'd finish her research. She'd accept the book deal. She'd move on with her life. And Dante Romano would become exactly what he'd made himself. A beautiful memory she'd finally learned to let go. That's the thing about consequences, they don't care about your timing. Victoria lost her family's fortune for one moment of cruelty. Dante lost the love of his life because he waited 8 years too long to find his courage. And Naomi? She walked away from both of them with her power intact, her dignity unshaken, and her heart finally free. If this story wrecked you the way it wrecked them, hit that subscribe button right now. Because Mafia Romance Hub tells the stories nobody else will. The ones where love isn't enough, where choices have real consequences, and where the woman who is underestimated holds all the power in the end. Turn on notifications because tomorrow's story will break your heart in a completely different way. And drop a comment telling me, should Naomi have given Dante one more chance, or did he deserve to lose her forever? I need to know where you stand. This is Mafia Romance Hub, where every slap echoes, every choice matters. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who only learned to fight for you when they'd already lost you. I'll see you in the next one.